You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Gold, crude oil, corn, soybeans, and more. With so many tradable products, the futures options market can be an intimidating place. How can you possibly keep track of the latest trading developments across so many different products? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Welcome to This Week in Futures Options, the program designed to help active futures options traders stay on top of this ever-changing marketplace. Each week, we'll break down the top trades, hot products, volatility explosions, and much more. This Week in Futures Options streams live, so be sure to check out our live stream via the Mixlr app. That's MIXLR. Or join our live chat room at mixlr.com/options-insider. Whether you're an experienced veteran or a newcomer looking to separate the wheat from the lean hogs, This Week in Futures Options has the information you can't find anywhere else. This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. And now, get ready to break down the latest futures options trading activity. It's time for This Week in Futures Options.
All right, everybody, that music means we are back once again. It is Thursday. It is 1:30 p.m. Central. It is 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Do you know what's cooking in the world of futures options? Well, let's find out together. It is time for TWIFO. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as from the network that so many things are popping. Just yesterday, celebrating the 1-year anniversary of what to me is the new show on the network, even though it's been 2 new shows since then. Of course, the Futures Rundown, very much the sister program to this one. So if you're listening to TWIFO, you should be checking out what's cooking in the underlying, aka the Futures Rundown. We went deep into 60-40 tax treatment yesterday. I know, super sexy stuff, but important stuff if you're trading futures. So make sure you check that out wherever you're getting this program. And of course, when you're ready to pull the trigger, you want to check out awesome pro Q&As like we did this week with our buddy Scott Nations, or options oddities at the end of the week. All sorts of fun on there. The optionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go. If you signed up there, you also got a chance to be one of the lucky few who got to participate in our inaugural Options Insider Fantasy Football League, where I am pleased to say, with week 1 in the books, my opponent for week 1 was none other than today's guest, Miss Carley Garner. She put up a heck of a fight, a spirited fight. I think at one point, each of us were 99.9% to win and have victory, only to have it snatched away and then come back again after a big play. It went down to the wire. One of those battles, listeners, were definitely the highest scoring battle in the league. She would have beat anyone else in the league this week, aside from our Options Insider squad. Miss Carley Garner from DeCarley Trading. Carley, a fun, if frustrating introduction to the world of fantasy football for you this week, madam. But a good college try, a good effort you gave it.
Hi, Mark. Congratulations. It was an interesting game. Honestly, immediately after this week wrapped up, I tried to find the setting on the app to remove that probability calculator because that is so misleading. I thought I had it in the bag, and then next thing I know, I'm getting crushed. The next thing I know, I got it in the bag. I mean, that was a wild ride.
It becomes a binary towards the end with each play. Yeah. Oh, you're 100%. Now you're 100%. Now, yes,
yeah, that's silly. That's silly.
I've learned to disregard that towards the end, but I thought I was out of it multiple times, only to see a couple of big plays come back in. So, yeah, it was a wild one. I've been in your shoes. I've been there where you are the second highest scoring person in the entire league. You would have beaten anyone else except for your opponent that week. So I do feel your pain. But you know what? I will take the victory as we keep on rolling into a little bit of the movers and shakers report.
It's time to find out what's rallying on the light side and falling to the dark side at CME Group this week. It's time for the Movers and Shakers Report.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Movers and Shakers Report, the portion of the show where we break down what's lighting it up to the light side and to the dark side over there at CME Group this week. If you just looked at the overall chart, you would see that it is mostly green on the chart this week. I would say 75-25, maybe 80-20 green over red out there this week. So a lot of green on the screen out there, even though the largest percentage mover is to the dark side this week. But Carley, you are our guest, still smarting from a week one battle and looking to come back in week two. Who are you playing this week, by the way? Who's your next opponent?
Actually, it is nickels and dimes.
Oh,
I don't know who's behind. I don't know who the manager
members.
is.
Yes, one of our pro members.
Okay.
We have a couple of we had a couple of extra slots that we allowed some of our pro members to take, and he is one of them. So I believe he was. Yeah, he's in the chat right now. He wanted me to talk a lot of smack to you. I was nice. Okay. I did not, Carley, but you might have a battle.
I can handle it. I can take it.
You might have a battle on your hands this week, but things are also battling to the light side and to the dark side. Which way are you starting off this week, Carley?
Light side, please.
All right, tell you what, you can rest and plot your comeback this week as I run through some movers and shakers. To the light side we go, listeners. Number 5, it's Palladium, up 1.57%. It was number 1 in the same direction last week, up 5.56%. So a banger couple of weeks, a banger year for most of the shiny stuff out there. If you listen to our futures rundown, we talked about the 1 year since we launched that show and which assets have been dominating the tape. And if you had a whole bunch of shiny stuff in your back pocket and some crypto in your wallet, you're looking pretty good out there. All right, number 4, it's healthcare, up 1.57%. That is, of course, the healthcare sector of the S&P 500. Keeping it in the sectors for number 3, it's the consumer discretionary sector, up 1.59%. Number 2, out to the international equity land, in particular the Nikkei, but the Nikkei denominated in the yen. I know it throws everybody off. Up 2.07% this week. And the big dog on a light side week, but not a hugely biased light side week. Only 2.3% to take the top spot this week. That gets you to soybean meal. That was number 5 in the other direction last week, off 2.03%. All right, to the dark side we go, where I said the number 1 percentage mover is lurking. Can you take a guess what it is? It might come as a surprise to you, but number 5, first off, we do have a whole heck of a lot of energy on our dark side. In fact, we're 4 for 5 on the bottom 5 this week, all energy, with one lone exception. It's that number 1 spot. Again, can you guess what it is this week? I'll give you a couple seconds, listeners, as I run through the rest. Number 5, RBOB, off 1.81%. It was number 1 in the same direction last week, off about 8.4%. So a rough couple of weeks for RBOB. Number 4, our old pal WTI, off 1.85%. Number 3, to the Widowmaker we go, Carley's favorite product. It's Nat Gas, off 2.05%. It was number 2 in the other direction, up nearly 5% last week, 4.89%. So a volatile couple of weeks for Nat Gas as we keep on rolling to number 2, keeping it in energy. It's heating oil, off 2.3%. And then the number 1 spot, the lone exception to the energy on the dark side this week. Could you guess it, listeners? It's another shiny one. I'll give you a hint. It's not gold or silver. You know that. They're making new all-time highs, seems like every day. Nope. It's platinum, giving up 3.6%. And again, kind of a quiet week from a net movement perspective. 3.6% is our largest percentage mover. We're used to seeing 9, 10, 12, 15%, sometimes more on the moving and shaking front. So interesting stuff afoot out there. Let's see if we can continue the interesting stuff as we roll on into the CVOL movers and shakers for this week. Remember, you can run this report for yourselves. CME and CVOL is what you have to type into your browser. That's going to get you to the dashboard. You will have to log in, so create a CME account. Takes 2 seconds, and it's free. And then you hit the 1 week on the high-low range, hit the aggregates tab, and then you too have your own custom-made CVOL report. Let's kick things off. And again, it's a bit of a mixed bag this week on the CVOL front. We got a lot of red on the screen, but a couple lone exceptions, like number one, energy. Energy CVOL popping a bit, about 46 and a quarter, up about 1.25 points right now. That is not the high for the week. It's close to it, though. The high was actually 46.78, so a little over half a point south of the high, but pretty close to it right now. The low was about 45, 44.99 to be precise. So kind of leaning towards the upside here in energy right now. Then a whole mess of dark side looking at commodities next, 31.42, up about 1/10 of a point today. But energy and commodities both have something in common. They only have one day where they are green for the week, and that is today, because commodities are pretty much pinning the needle to the downside right now, pretty close to that level. Obviously, they're up 0.09 today, so the low was pretty much 31.33 down there. So interesting stuff out there. So right at the low right now, the high was 33.04. So at the low end of its 52-week range for the commodity CVOL. Treasury price vol also coming in a little bit right now, 5.14, off 0.12. Probably reflecting this 100% certainty that we are going to see pretty much a Fed rate cut out there next week. I can't remember the last time the Fed watch was this this certain in one direction. So the Treasury price vol coming in all week with the exception of one day. That is the low level for the week, the high 5.86. So coming in almost 3/4 of a point. That's a big move for Treasury price vol ahead of a big announcement next week. That's interesting that they would be so willing to just smack vol before we know for certain what's going on out there. Next, we have the ag product CVOL, 19 2/3 today, off 0.18. The low was actually 18.90 and the high was 19.84. A great year and an interesting vol level for the ag. So the ags and the energy are kind of the lone exceptions to the rule. They're both near their highs for the week. Everything else is getting clobbered, including FX, 7.56 today, off 1/4 of a point. That's a lot of juice in the world of FX vol. And that is the low for the week, the high 8.38. So coming in quite a bit on the week, man. They're smoking FX vol as well. Below, we have the metals vol also coming back to earth this week, 18.07, off over a point, about 1.1 points just today. So they're coming for it today. That is the low for the week, the high 20.25. So they're off 2.2 points on the week for metals vol. That's fascinating. And then at the end of our list, we have the Treasury yield volatility, always a wild number to come to grips with. 93.5 today, off about 2.5 points. That is the low for the week, the high 109.60. So pretty much everything pinning the needle to the dark side this week, with the exception of energy and the ags. But since Carley's here and since energy is lighting up the tape, I think we will start there first.
It's time to tap into the deep options well of black gold, Texas tea, Nat Gas, and more. It's time to talk energy.
Welcome to the wild world of energy, listeners. You know where to find this. CMEgroup.com/TWIFO. Once again, you will have to log into your CME account. Takes a couple of seconds, but it is free, and then it gets you access to all this cool stuff, including the TWIFO reports. Then you're going to go into asset class, go down 3 slots to energy, and then 3 more to Carley's favorite product, Nat Gas. Carley, the last time we chatted, you were all hot and bothered about feeder cattle. But we all know that Nat Gas is your true favorite out there. What's catching your eye in the Widowmaker this week?
It is my pet market. So first, I'd like to apologize with the light side, dark side snafu. It was my fault, not the producers.
It happens to the best of us.
I was too dense to scroll. Okay. So there we go. In regards to the energies, honestly, I'm kind of surprised to see the vol as high as it is, because when I look at the option market and everything's really sluggish, and the options are on the pretty affordable side, at least for crude oil and nat gas. So I'm not sure what's throwing the energy off, if it's heating oil or what. I'd have to take a deeper look. But yeah, I'm excited to take a look at these markets.
And you always have something interesting cooking in the nat gas world. Maybe it's a risk reversal or a ladder, or maybe you're just long some upside. What's cooking in DeCarley and nat gas right now? Or are you on the sidelines waiting and seeing?
We're basically long call spreads. It started out as a long call spread financed by a short put. We bought our put back on this rally just to take the risk and margin out of it. And now we're holding on to the call spreads, hoping for a return to the downtrend line. On the October contract, we have pinpointed the downtrend line somewhere around 340-ish. Again, these aren't 2022 markets. These are 2025 markets. So I'd say the best case scenario for nat gas bulls is probably 375 in the short run on the front months. Maybe some of the cold season months will get a little higher than that, but keep your expectations intact. But I do think being long is going to be the right trade eventually, obviously going into the colder season.
Yeah, we are in that seasonally appropriate time to maybe have a little bit of upside. Of course, we were hanging out at like 3.5 in June or July this year, so nat gas is a weird beast this year. It's kind of surprising me a lot. But if I had to lean one way, I like your way. And it's always nice to have a call spread that you finance all or at least some of, right, Carley? It's a good feeling. Take some of the pressure off.
Absolutely. I mean, options are eroding assets, so we have to pay attention to that, not be complacent. Complacency will kill it with time value erosion. So
it's like when you walk into the casino, you already got a whole bunch of house money burning a hole in your pocket. You feel a little bit better about throwing some money on the pass line and rolling the bones, Carley.
100%.
All right, let's see who's rolling the bones out here in nat gas options this week, shall we, listeners? Is it a banger? The answer is it's decent. About 750,000 contracts. We've obviously seen more, well north of 1 million, but it's respectable. It's going to be more than a lot of the other products we could talk about, like, let's say, almost the entirety of the metals complex added together. So nat gas puts up some paper. That front future hanging out at a 293 right now, off about 11 cents, or about 3.6%. That's, of course, since Monday. These reports are obviously this weekend, listeners. If you go back to the end of our show last week, it's off a little over 2% in nat gas land. And looks like the bulk of the action, nearly 50%, going up in the October contract. That's got exactly 2 weeks to go, 14 days. So interesting, kind of right at that sweet spot, right outside the weeklies and right kind of halfway through the monthlies. It's kind of an interesting area where everyone's so 0-day obsessed or very long-term obsessed. 2 weeks, kind of an interesting, fun zone. What is the vol, you might be asking yourself, in October nat gas? It's a 54, up about 0.75 of a point. 54 exactly, interesting, which is kind of interesting. And kind of, if you know anything about nat gas, kind of anemic, not exactly a banger vol. We're used to seeing nat gas at least in the mid-60s, if not much higher from a vol perspective. So 54, I'm not saying it's cheap because any vol can go lower, but it's the kind of thing where if you're going to blast away on some vol out here, you might want to take a second thought about it. At the very least, make sure the juice is worth the squeeze. And God forbid, maybe you do what Carley does, and maybe you actually buy some cheap vol, and then maybe you finance it with something else, and it's even cheaper, listeners. So all sorts of fun out here. But yeah, 54 vol. Do you concur with that, Carley?
Here's my thought. Puts are too cheap to sell, so I wouldn't be selling puts in nat gas. I think buying calls is a good idea, but again, it's better to be cheap in this market than not, especially when we've got a market that's going nowhere. I think your best bet is probably call spreads in this environment, is my personal opinion.
Works. You're selling something against what you're buying, and then maybe you get a little financing action in there.
Right. And I will add, if the market, let's say the market rolls over sharply and vol picks up on the puts, then by all means, you could probably sell them, but you want to be really careful selling naked options, obviously, in any market. So you don't want to do it when it's quiet. You want to do it when everyone else is buying puts. You want to be selling puts. That's the idea.
That is the case out here, listeners. Speaking of selling puts and calls out there, let's look at some of the skew and see how that's lining up here in nat gas. And the answer is it's slightly bid to the puts in October, about 3.5%, 3.4% bid, which is not much, quite frankly. And the calls are almost flat. They're about 1.4% cheap. So not a lot going on the calls out there. Not a lot going on really in either direction. So vol kind of anemic, skew kind of, it seems like we're kind of settling in here for a little bit, which maybe is why we see the number one contract. There's a lot of action on the 2 3/4 puts going out in 2 weeks, But the actual number one is going out a little bit farther, going out to the November 2.5 puts. These are, you have about 45, almost 46,000 of those bad boys out here, listeners. So that is actually the number one spot out here. Those have about 47 days to go. The vol out there is at about a 53 as well. So we're not talking explosive vol levels anywhere on the term structure. These 2.5 puts, looks like they were closing all week long. Again, 45,000 of these going up. The big day was Tuesday, about 20,000 on Tuesday, 13,600 on Wednesday, 5,800 today, 6,500 on Monday. And again, even though 45,000 have gone up this week, mostly closing, there's still 42,000 open on this strike. So these bad boys, there's a lot of 2.5 put paper open. By the way, if you're wondering, listeners, what are these puts trading for here? The 2 3/4 puts in October trading for about a nickel out there today. So again, not the juiciest. So if you want to take a flyer on those, and they're almost about 20 cents out of the money, pretty close to it. You want to take a flyer on those for 14 days. That's your Huckleberry. And the November and December puts out here, listeners, we've got the November puts trading about 3 cents, so even cheaper. And if we go all the way out to December, listeners, the Dees 2.5 puts trading a whopping 1.6 cents. So a lot of cheapy puts changing hands out there in Nat Gas this week, listeners, which is probably why we're seeing so much options action out there. All right, listeners, looks like the internet god's not smiling upon Carley. We'll see if we can get her back as we keep on rolling. So we're hanging out in energy. Let's keep the party rolling out to WTI out here, listeners. WTI, like we said, coming into the start of the show this week on the dark side, off nearly 2%, even if it has gained a little bit back this week, up about half a buck or 0.75%. Just since Monday. Is it a banger day out there in WTI options? It's respectable. North of the ADV, it's a little over 500,000, about 550,000 contracts on the tape. Looks like the lion's share of that coming in the October contract, nearly 50% of the flow going up out there, listeners. What is the volume, might be asking, in October? WTI, which has a mere 6 days to go, so effectively a weekly, listeners, it's at about a 27.10, off about $4.50. So kind of bucking the trend of the CVOL, which shows a pretty strong run for the week here in energy vol. So interesting stuff out here in WTI. Skew-wise, we have the puts about 3.8% bid this week against 2.1% last week, so getting a little bit of a bid. The calls 1% rich last week. This week, 2.5% discounted, so the calls swinging slightly to the dark side. The puts ticking up a little bit, so maybe showing options market thinks we're slightly top heavy at these levels, but we shall see. Let's see what the options market is giving us out here this week. What is the hot option out here in WTI this week? It's the Ox 65s. Again, we're at 62 and about a third in that front future, listener. So 65, about 270 out of the money. You got 6 days to go. Can we get there in crude oil, listeners? 28, almost 29,000 contracts going up. So definitely that is where the hot action is out here this week, listeners. The big day was actually Tuesday, 11,200 going up on Tuesday, 10,500 on Monday, 4,000 Wednesday, about 3,000 today, against an OI remaining about 11,200. So still some size open on that strike. And then if you think, well, that's weird that it's all about the calls, puts number 2, listeners, about 22,500 of those going up this week. The hot day for those also Tuesday, about 11,000. So 11,000 and change calls on Tuesday, mostly closing, and 11,000 roughly puts also on Tuesday, mostly closing there as well. 6,666 changing hands on Monday. Wednesday, 3,300. Today, 1,400 against an OI of 22,000. So interesting. Of those two, listeners, 6 days to go. Roughly equidistant out of the money strikes. Would you rather have the 60 puts or the 65 calls, listeners? Which way would you be leaning out here, listeners? And if that's not enough upside optimism for you, maybe like a little bit more distant strike, how about the 68s? They changed hands 13,300 times. Pretty much 4,000 and change going up every day this week. Mostly closing, only a couple hundred going up today out here, listeners. So 68s, that seems like a heck of a move. Could potentially be some vertical action, 65, 68 going up there as well, listeners. And you know what, listeners, before we get out of here this week, because obviously seems like nothing is smiling on the systems front this week, but before we get out of here, let's do a real quick sojourn into the shiny stuff.
Werewolves beware. It's time to explore the options activity in silver, gold, and other shiny things. It's time to talk metals.
All right, everybody, welcome to the metals. We're not going to talk the usual suspects this week, your silvers, your golds, just because we've done that many times. And I can't remember the last time we really took a deep dive into platinum. That's our number one dark side mover, also our number one percentage mover this week, and starting to do enough paper to at least merit a little further consideration. I mean, it's not lighting the world on fire. It's not even silver's 35, 50,000. Certainly not gold's $250,000. It's more 5,000 range, but it's enough to at least take a quick look here before we roll out on this gremlin beset week here, listeners, on the TWIFO program. 5,235 contracts going up this week. By the way, if you're wondering if you don't follow platinum regularly, that front future with 6 days to go, hanging out at a 1395.5, up nearly 9 handles or 2/3% just since Monday. Of course, you go back to the end of our show last week, it's off a little bit. And then if you go to the November future that has about 34 days to go, you're talking about a 1410 or so out there, listeners. Looks like about 40% of that flow going up in the contract that has 6 days to go. So very near dated flow here in all things platinum. As you might expect, the bid is to the upside, as it is with most shiny stuff, but platinum's moving, so you're going to get even more of a pronounced bid in the skew. And that's what we're seeing. We're 13.5% bid on the October calls, 17.7% bid. And if we go all the way out to January of next year, listeners, it's at about a 16% bid out there. So a little bit of juice to the upside. All the puts are about 6 to 8% discounted. So bid to the upside, it must be a precious metal, listeners. And the hot option out here this week in a decently active week in platinum, it's the 1500s. Again, these have 6 days to go, listeners. Also, what is the volume, you might be asking, in platinum? It's at about a 32, which actually, for most of the precious metals we talk about, is actually fairly juicy. We're used to gold being somewhere in the mid-teens probably, and then, silver a little bit juicier than that. And here we have platinum coming in with a 30 handle. Looks like the hot day on these 1500s. They traded about almost 600 times today against an OI of 2550. 326 on Monday. It looks like it was a 1514 quarter vertical, closing on the 1500s, opening on the 14 quarters. So looks like they did a little bit of the old roll down, which, again, makes a wee bit more sense than the the 1500s out there right now. 14 quarters at least have a shot. I'm guessing they didn't get much for those 1500s. They were selling them. Also, we're noting 600 of them trading today, just straight up on the 1500s. So that's kind of interesting. And if you want some puts, 200 of the 13 half puts also going up today. So fascinating stuff. Interesting to see. We can start sinking our teeth a little more into platinum because it's actually doing some paper out there. And that is going to do it for this Gremlins Beset episode of TWIFO. We'll have to get Carley on again another time when her systems aren't plaguing her out here, so we can actually get a full conversation with her, and I can also give her more of a hard time about losing to me in fantasy football. But nonetheless, we thank her for joining us today. Check her out, DeCarleyTrading.com. Maybe give her a hard time or cheer along with her on her fantasy football. We'll tweet out all the results of our Options Insider League. A lot of great people playing along. Myself, Carley, Garner, a lot of great guests of this show. So Rich Excel is part of the league. He was blowing me up about the waiver wires the other day. He wants to put people on IR. All kinds of fun out there as well. Brian Overby, who hasn't been on this show, but on a lot of shows on the network out there. Some of our pro members. It's a good time. Keep an eye on our socials. We'll have all of the updates for you out there. Back again in a little bit, systems willing, with today's episode of the Hot Options Report. Then back again tomorrow Same bat time, same bat channel to talk some vol on vol views. Then one final time for the pro folks, we open up the Options Oddities kimono, see what's lurking therein. Check it out for yourselves, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. And then we're back again one final time for the week to wrap it all up with another episode of the Hot Options Report. So we'll see you all tomorrow. And of course, stay safe out there.
This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world manage risks and seize opportunities. CME Group offers the deepest and most liquid options on futures across all asset classes, including interest rates, equity indexes, foreign exchange, energy, agriculture, and metals. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. This broadcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute trading advice or the solicitation of purchases or sale of any futures or options. The rulebook of the applicable exchange should be consulted as the authoritative source on all current contract specifications. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.